How much? No, I heard you. I just need you to say it again so my brain can process it. $73,000? Or a broken ankle? But I have insurance. That was my American brother-in-law, Mike. Fell off a ladder in Ohio. Clean break. 2 surgeries. 1 night in hospital. And a bill that arrived in an envelope thick enough to stop a door. He paid $11,000 out of pocket, with insurance. The good insurance. Now let me tell you what happened when I broke my ankle in New Zealand. I paid nothing. I signed 1 form, and the government sent me 80% of my salary for 6 months while I couldn't work. And here's the part that scares Americans more than the bill. The part that keeps them up at night. I didn't sue anyone. I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't even thank anyone. I just got better. If you're American, there's a 90% chance you've never heard of ACC. And that's not your fault. America doesn't export its healthcare system as a model. It exports its fear of healthcare. And that fear is so loud, so constant, that it drowns out the fact that other countries simply don't live like that. ACC stands for Accident Compensation Corporation. It's been running in New Zealand since 1974. And if I described it to you in one sentence, you'd think I was lying. If you are injured in New Zealand, citizen, tourist, resident, undocumented, child, adult, drunk, sober, at work, on holiday, in your own home, in someone else's home, ACC covers your medical costs and compensates your lost income. And it doesn't matter whose fault it was. Let me say that last part again because it's the part that breaks American brains. It doesn't matter whose fault it was. In America, the entire system is built on fault. You slip in a grocery store, you call a lawyer. You get hurt at work, you call a lawyer. You break your ankle on a hiking trail, you look around for someone to blame because if you don't find someone to blame, you pay the $73,000. In New Zealand, fault is irrelevant. The system assumes accidents happen. And it assumes the community, all of us, together, should absorb the cost so one person doesn't get destroyed by it. But here's where it gets interesting. Because ACC isn't free. And it isn't perfect. And there are things about it that would make an American's skin crawl. Good things. Bad things. Things that are just weird. And over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you all of them. Let's start with the thing Americans can't wrap their heads around. The funding. ACC isn't funded by general taxes. Not directly. It's funded by something called a levy. If you earn money in New Zealand, a small percentage comes out of your pay, automatically, invisibly, the same way your coffee money disappears on a Monday morning. Employers pay a levy too. Car owners pay a levy when they register their vehicles. And if you're self-employed, you pay a levy based on your risk level. On an average salary, it's about $30 to $40 a month. Less than a gym membership. Less than 2 weeks of Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney Plus combined. And for that money, you get something America charges thousands for. Peace of mind. Now let me walk you through what actually happens, because this is where the scary truth lives. And it's not scary the way Americans think. Imagine you're a tourist. You've been in New Zealand for 3 days. You're hiking the Tongariro crossing. You misstep. You hear the pop before you feel it. Your ankle is broken. In America, your first thought is, how much is this going to cost? Do I have travel insurance? Will my credit card cover it? Should I call an ambulance or an Uber? An Uber is cheaper. In New Zealand, your first thought is, ouch. Because here's what happens next. The ambulance comes. You don't ask how much it costs because you already know it's covered. You get to the hospital. They x-ray it. They set it. They operate if they need to. They give you crutches, pain meds, a follow-up appointment, and at no point does anyone hand you a clipboard with a payment plan. But here's the part that sounds like socialism to American ears. And I need you to hear me carefully. ACC then pays you 80% of your income while you can't work. Up to a cap, which in 2026 is around $2,000 a week. If you were earning minimum wage, you get 80% of minimum wage. If you were earning $100,000, you get 80% of $100,000, up to the cap. You don't apply for unemployment. You don't burn through your savings. You don't start a GoFundMe. You fill out a form, and the money arrives in your account every week until a doctor says you're ready to go back. And I can hear the American voices already. But what about fraud? What about people faking injuries? What about personal responsibility? ACC investigates fraud, They have a whole department for it. But the system is built on a premise that America abandoned decades ago. Most people don't want to be injured. Most people want to go back to work. And if you make the system easy to use, honest to navigate, and generous enough that people don't feel desperate, the fraud rate stays low. In America, the fraud rate in healthcare is estimated at 3 to 10% of total spending. In New Zealand, ACC fraud is a fraction of a percent. Not because Kiwis are more honest, but because the system doesn't force people into corners where lying feels like survival. But now we get to the scary part. The truth that isn't in the brochures. ACC is not optional. You cannot opt out. If you earn money in New Zealand, you pay the levy, even if you have private health insurance, even if you think you're invincible, even if you're a libertarian who wants the government out of your wallet. Levy comes out before you see your pay. And if you're self-employed, the levy can sting because ACC calculates your risk based on your industry. A desk worker pays less than a builder. A builder pays less than a professional rugby player. And if you have a history of claims, your levy can go up. There's no shopping around for a better rate. There's no competitor offering a discount. ACC is a monopoly, and monopolies make Americans nervous. For good reason. But here's the thing, and this is the part that took me years to understand. ACC's monopoly isn't corporate. It's social. The entire country agreed 50 years ago that instead of suing each other into poverty, we would all pay a little bit into a pot, and when someone gets hurt, the pot pays out. And that decision changed everything. In America, youth rugby barely exists because parents are terrified of lawsuits. In New Zealand, kids play rugby at 5 years old, with no helmets, no pads, and parents on the sideline drinking tea. Because if someone gets hurt, ACC handles it. No one sues the school. No one sues the coach. No one sues the kid who tackled too hard. The absence of fault doesn't just pay medical bills. It removes the fear that strangles American life. But there's another scary truth. And this one is uncomfortable. ACC does not cover illness. Only injury. If you get cancer, ACC does not help. If you have a heart attack, ACC does not help. If you develop a chronic condition from years of work, ACC might help if you can prove the work caused it, but it's an uphill battle. This creates a strange split in New Zealand. Break your leg on a Saturday? Covered. Get diagnosed with diabetes on a Monday? That's the public health system, with its own waiting list, its own costs, its own frustrations. So ACC isn't a magic wand. It's a safety net with a very specific shape. It catches you if you fall. It doesn't catch you if you slowly get sick. And for Americans watching this, I need you to understand that specificity is what makes it work. ACC does one thing, and it does it well. It doesn't try to be everything. It doesn't try to replace private insurance. It just removes the single biggest fear in American life, the fear that one accident will bankrupt you, and it does it for the price of a few coffees a month. I want to tell you one more story, because this is the moment everything clicked for me. A few years ago, a friend of mine, American, living in Auckland, got into a car accident. Not her fault. T-boned at an intersection. Whiplash, concussion, 6 weeks off work. In America, she would have called a lawyer within the hour. She would have sued the other driver. She would have fought with her insurance company. She would have paid thousands in co-pays while waiting for a settlement that might take 2 years. In New Zealand, she called ACC. They asked if she was okay. They sent her to a physio. They paid her 80% of her salary. And 6 weeks later, she went back to work. She told me the strangest part wasn't the money. It wasn't the free treatment. It was the absence of anger. She didn't need to hate the other driver. She didn't need to turn the accident into a war. The system absorbed the damage, and she was free to just heal. And she said to me, I don't know if I can go back to America. Not because of the healthcare. Because of the hatred. The hatred you have to carry to survive. That's the scary truth. ACC doesn't just pay bills. It removes the need for vengeance. And for a country built on the right to sue, the right to blame, the right to turn pain into profit, that is genuinely terrifying. So here's what I want you to take from this. ACC is not perfect. It's a monopoly. It doesn't cover everything. It takes money from your pay, whether you want it or not. And if you're the type of person who believes every problem should be solved by the market, it will feel like a cage. But if you're the type of person who has ever lain awake at night wondering how you'd pay for a broken bone, or if you've ever avoided calling an ambulance because you couldn't afford the ride, or if you've ever watched a family member fight an insurance company while fighting cancer at the same time, then ACC looks less like a cage and more like oxygen. New Zealand didn't invent compassion. It just decided that compassion was cheaper than lawyers, that prevention was cheaper than emergency rooms, that a community taking care of its own was cheaper than a nation of individuals suing each other into the ground. And the result? Kiwis don't live in fear of accidents. They live in a country where a broken ankle is a medical problem, not a financial catastrophe. That's not socialism. That's just math. And it's math that America forgot how to do. So that's the scary truth. ACC isn't scary because it fails. It's scary because it works so well that it makes you question everything you thought you knew about responsibility, risk, and what a society owes its people. If you want to see what other scary truths New Zealand is hiding, subscribe. Because next week, we're going somewhere even more uncomfortable. We're talking about why New Zealand houses don't have central heating, and why Americans who move here spend their first winter genuinely confused about whether they're allowed to be cold. Until then, this is Kiwiverse. Stay warm. Or don't. Apparently it's a choice.